Welcome to the Fantasy's Finest Fantasy Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, William Spencer, Jalen McQueen, and Mark Carter.
What's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy's Finest Podcast. Your boy is back, Will Spencer, the host of the show. Yo, week one, if you manage to get out of week one with a W, more power to you. I did not see the outcome that happened last week to kick off the fantasy season going down the way that it did. So many players, so many top tier players ended up flopping. I don't think I've ever played a season of fantasy football where that happened. It was ridiculous. Baffled is the word. No one could have saw that coming. No one could have saw that coming. But we're going to get into a lot of things this episode. I'm still in shock, man. I just can't believe it went down. I lost in a lot of leagues. Let me introduce the podcast before I jump into to what happened on week one. The travesty that happened to my fantasy teams in week one to kick the season off, to get everything going. You know, it's just ridiculous. But this episode, we're going to be talking about some players that off the waiver wire that you need to be grabbing. Yes, claims have already gone in, but there's still plenty of talent at a low, under 50% roster that you need to be going and grabbing if you need these players or you need these positions filled, because the players that you started didn't pan out this week, and it's too early to panic. It's way too early to panic, but you might need a new backup. You might need some more depth at a position of need. Maybe an injury messed you up. Xavier Worthy. First of all, let's get into that real quick. Travis Kelce, what were you doing? How do you run over your own player like that? Ran him completely over, knocked him off his feet, shoulder injury. Ugh, you talk about starting week one with an automatic donut in your roster. That was horrible. That was horrible. And then when I went to go check my rosters and I seen I had Xavier Worthy starting in a couple of leagues, man, it's just like, yeah, this is how week one is going to go. But yeah, we'll be getting into some options for you guys for fantasy for the waiver wire heading into week two. Give you some options to provide you with what you may need to help boost your fantasy roster. So make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast on YouTube. You can check out our YouTube channel at Fantasy's Finest. Subscribe to the podcast there. If you're the audio type, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you hit the follow button across our social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Threads, TikTok. TikTok was blowing up. We just passed 8,000 followers on TikTok. Appreciate all the love coming in and all the engagement coming in and getting your thoughts, your questions, and things like that on our TikTok channel. We're on Facebook too. We do have a Facebook page at the Fantasy's Finest on there as well. And the YouTube channel is growing. We just cracked 560, trying to get to 600 and then go beyond. You know what I'm saying? So I love seeing all the new subscribers and followers on our YouTube channel as well. So appreciate the love. But we gotta, before we jump into the episode, man, we gotta just quickly go over some nonsense that happened in week one. And I gotta give you guys an update on my fantasy leagues. We also are doing the finest pick'ems again. Mark is our current champion for the finest pick'ems. He got off to a strong start. He finished with, I think, 14 wins this week in week one. I came in second at 12-4. I'm going to beat you this year, Mark. Mark my words. No pun intended. I'm going to beat you. You're not that good. You're really not. And like at the end of his picks, Mark likes to pick the same players, pick the same teams that you have, because he knows that I'm a threat. So like his last two picks for week one were Minnesota Vikings and the Buffalo Bills. And he picked the same ones that I did. So I'm like, I'm watching you. I know your tactics, sir. I know your tactics. I know your moves. We're here. So best believe I'm taking you out this year. But for week 1 for my fantasy leagues, yeah, that's where I really could have used some W's because okay, so I have 18 leagues this year, and I know you might be saying, Will, that is a lot of fantasy leagues. But hear me out. I have made strides to improve myself. I have a problem. I love fantasy football. But 18 leagues is not that much, especially when you consider the fact that I downsized. Yes, I had more leagues. I was in more leagues than the 18 that I'm in this year. A few years ago, I almost cracked 30 leagues. 30 leagues. That's an improvement for me. I'm getting better. I'm not jumping into every league that I get invited to. I'm trying to hone in on my home leagues, the ones that I commission. I want to make sure that I'm taking care of them, and I want to get my championships back from when I lost them last year. So I'm focused on them. I'm in the Scott Fish Bowl again. That's going to be a little tough this year. I think my roster is not going to be as good as it has been in the past, but I'm still in the Scott Fish Bowl this year. Shout out to Scott Fish for sending the invite. Let me get in there one more time. I'm grateful to be in there. But all my other leagues, my dynasty league, I'm locked in. That's why I downsize. I want to get the championships in those leagues. I'm a defending champion in a couple of leagues. So I'm locked in, but oh boy, 5-12 across 17 leagues for week 1. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. And I have nobody to blame. I'm not blaming me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not. Maybe let me rephrase that. I have everybody else to blame because nobody came to play in week 1. CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, David Montgomery, Dak Prescott, George Pickens. I could keep going. Nico Collins. All these top tier players or these upper echelon players, they came out and flopped. Fantasy managers used first and second round picks on some of these guys, and they came out and they laid an egg. Goose egg. So now fantasy managers are scrambling a little bit, trying to figure out what to do, trying to figure out how they can improve their fantasy lineups. And that's why you are here today, because we're going to help you out with that. So we're going to get into some news to catch you guys up on the latest headlines coming out of the NFL heading into week 2. And then we're going to talk about some options that you can get off the waiver wire that you should be checking for even after the claims have gone through, because these options are still available for you, or they may still be available for you. Sometimes people don't be paying attention to what claims are going through. You can always make picks even after the claims go through. So we're going to get you right. So let's get into the episode with our news and notes from around the NFL.
News and notes from around the NFL.
All right, first up on the docket, Packers wide receiver Matthew Golden is dealing with an ankle injury. He returned to practice Tuesday and Wednesday. He's looking like he's back to his regular self. He's been listed as a full participant in practice. That's a good sign for Matthew Golden. He really didn't get started against the Detroit Lions in week 1. Hopefully we get to see something with him going up against the Commanders for Thursday Night Football. So I definitely want to see more of Matthew Golden. Hopefully he turns into the wide receiver 1 that they've been bragging about all offseason. I've seen some clips from Jordan Love talking about or giving praise to Matthew Golden. So we want to see that on the field. We want to see that translate quickly because, you got rookie wide receivers or rookie players that you're hoping that can transcend and lock in those roles, but you gotta hold on to them for a little bit longer. 49ers, they have placed George Kittle on injury reserve due to a hamstring injury. He left Sunday's game against the Seattle Seahawks with a hamstring injury. He did not return. And now, if you got George Kittle, You're going to miss him for another 4 games. He's not going to be available until week 6. So it's a good thing that you're tuning in today because we got some options for you. Staying with the 49ers, NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports that 49ers wide receiver Jauan Jennings seems to have avoided a serious shoulder injury. He's been pretty banged up as, how many times when we say it that the 49ers wide receivers are dropping like flies. They keep getting hurt. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. And if it's not bad with Jauan Jennings, then you're not going to like this next one. ESPN's Adam Schefter reports that 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy, who was dealing with a shoulder and toe injury, is uncertain for week 2 against the New Orleans Saints. Now, recent reports have come up stating that he's a long shot to play in week 2. Mac Jones would get the start for 49ers if Purdy can't go, and it's really sounding like Brock Purdy is not going to be available for week 2. And some reports are even speculating that Purdy could miss more time behind these injuries. So we have to wait and see what's going to go on after week 2. But if Purdy misses time early, that is a big blow for the 49ers and for their skilled players. Mac Jones has been competent in the past, but you would rather have Brock Purdy out there throwing the ball over Mac Jones. Brian Schottenheimer said that the Cowboys need to see more consistency from Jaydon Blue for him to be active. Now, he was inactive week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Miles Sanders got the start. And if you watched that game, you saw Miles Sanders fumble the ball. Now, social media and Cowboys fans have been all over the place as to whether or not is it a big deal that Miles Sanders fumbled? Is it not a big deal that Miles Sanders fumbled? He got ran down by Zach Bone on a 49-yard scamper. His whole thing is supposed to be speed, but he wasn't able to bring it home and run that touchdown in, or that could have been touchdown in the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. That probably could have changed the scope of the game. But then he fumbled 2 plays later. And it's like, dog, if Jaydon Blue was playing, he would not have gotten ran down by Zach Bone. I'm of the belief that Jaydon Blue should be playing over Miles Sanders. They remember the Cowboys signed Miles Sanders to a 1-year deal. So to me, you should want to see what the young guys can do, what your rookies can do. And for whatever reason, Jaydon Blue is not showing the coaches that he needs to be active for these games. So hopefully that changes really soon, because Jaydon Blue has that home run ability. Like I said before in other videos and clips and stuff, that I feel like Jaydon Blue has that Jahmyr Gibbs effect. Not saying that he is Jahmyr Gibbs, but he has that big playability that you need to spark your offense, and we're not getting it with Miles Sanders, at least not yet. Now, if you want to be fair, it's only been 1 game, but I've never been a fan of Miles Sanders to begin with, so I don't even think he should have made the team, if we're being honest. But we can get into that a little later or in another episode. But yeah, Miles Sanders shouldn't have made the team. Let's keep going with the news. ESPN's Adam Schefter reports that the Jaguars traded running back Tank Bigsby to the Eagles for a 2026 5th and 6th round picks. I don't know how Howie keeps getting these deals done, but he's doing it. It must be fantastic to see, to have a general manager that likes to make deals and make things happen. I wish Jerry Jones would be paying attention to how Howie Roseman is doing business. But the Eagles made the trade because, or it's been speculated that Will Shipley, not this part, but Will Shipley's dealing with a rib injury. So it prompted the Eagles to go grab another running back. A.J. Dillon is also on the roster. I don't know how that makes them feel about A.J. Dillon, but you still have Shipley, you have Dillon, and now you have Tank Bigsby, who's going to be on the roster somewhere behind these guys. Saquon Barkley is still the guy in Philadelphia, so there's no doubts there. And we'll wrap it up with some Quinshon Judkins news. Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said that we'll see when it comes to Quinshon Judkins playing in week 2 against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, more recent reports have stated that Judkins has had his hearing with the NFL investigation crew about his situation that happened, his personal the conduct policy for the NFL that he violated He had his hearing. The NFL can still suspend Judkins. They're still weighing that option, so he wasn't able to practice on Wednesday. And with that still looming over his head, that the possibility of him being suspended, we still have to wait. We're still like in a holding pattern for Judkins. So hopefully everything gets resolved after this hearing. They've already got it done. So maybe it's only a matter of time until they render a verdict and determine whether or not Judkins can play in maybe week 3, or if he can play in week 2, or if they're going to suspend him for multiple games. So we'll find out when we do, because they've been kind of dragging their feet with this. But that'll do it for the news. Now let's get into our main segment. Let's see what targets you can get off the waiver wire right now to help your team. All right, now there are plenty of targets that you could go and look at and try and get off the waiver wire. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but here are some guys who have, the cream of the crop, as it were. These are the guys that you should be looking for if you need them. Now, we're going to kick this one off with Atlanta Falcons quarterback Michael Penix Jr. Had a fantastic game in week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He finished as a QB9, 24 fantasy points. Now, the thing that stood out to me is that he was throwing the ball all over the place, and I like that. You want to see your quarterback throw with volume, because volume can lend to fantasy points and opportunity. And he threw the ball 42 times, completed 27 passes. He also threw some rushing yards in there. He added 21 more rushing yards on the ground. He had 2 total touchdowns in the contest in week 1. So he has some rushing upside, which is always great for fantasy football. So Michael Penix Jr., if you need a quarterback or you weren't sold on some of the guys, remember we had guys like Jared Goff, CJ Stroud kind of flame out. And I keep bringing those up because I have either players from the Lions, or I do have CJ Stroud as my QB1. Disheartening for sure, but if you need a backup quarterback, I would definitely recommend picking up Michael Penix, because you never know what's going to happen. Your QB1 could go down at any moment, and you definitely don't want to be scrambling on the waiver wire trying to find a quarterback if you have to deal with injuries. Like if you have Brock Purdy right now, Michael Penix Jr. should be on your bench. You should be going to go get him right now and adding him to your bench. Now, like I mentioned before in the outset, claims have already gone through, but the percentages haven't jumped to the point where Michael Penix is still, or he's not available, according to ESPN's roster percentage. Now, before Wednesday, he was rostered at 20% heading into the waiver claims, and now it's up to 26%. So he's still available out there for fantasy managers if they need a new quarterback or they need a backup quarterback, depending on what they're dealing with. I would recommend picking up Michael Penix Jr. Like I said, the volume is there. He does provide you with some rushing upside, especially inside the red zone. You definitely want to have an option where you can get multiple ways to score touchdowns. Michael Penix is going to give you that. So definitely pick up Michael Penix if you need a quarterback, even if you don't. A strategy that you can employ if you have the roster space. If you can get a top waiver pick, do so. You got to figure out how to keep talent out of the enemy's hands. And everybody in your league, aside from you, is the op. You don't want to give them what they need. So if a person needs a quarterback, you got the space, scoop them up. Then they got to come to you and make a deal. So you get something for your troubles. You know what I mean? All right, let's go to the tight end position, because we already mentioned that George Kittle is out. You might need an option. Juwan Jennings, New Orleans Saints tight end, he finished as the tight end 1 for week 1, 11 targets, 8 catches, 76 yards receiving, and he finished with 15.6 fantasy points. This is encouraging. Now, I've been saying for a while now, maybe the last year or two, Juwan Jennings has sleeper appeal. He has sleeper appeal. And now he's in a system, at least for week 1, he is in a system where he's going to be valued. He's going to be targeted. Spencer Rattler is not, at least to me, he is not a quarterback that's going to be throwing it downfield a whole bunch of times. He does have the wide receivers to do it in Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, but you need a safety blanket for a quarterback like Spencer Rattler, and Jauan Jennings is that safety blanket for him. He led, I believe, he finished second in targets behind Chris Olave, which is good. He's an athletic tight end, big body. He definitely could be used around the goal line. So there's ways for Jauan Jennings to be an asset for fantasy managers, and he is in a system that does well in promoting tight ends. Kellen Moore has shown you, maybe outside of Philadelphia, his time in Philadelphia, that he likes to get tight ends worked into his system, especially when he's passing the ball as much as he is. So, rostered in just 30% of ESPN leagues before claims went through, it's gone up maybe about 30. Actually, no. I think Jauan Jennings, see now, and I had it on my doc too. That's the crazy part. But when you see, this is what happens when you don't check all your things before you start a show. But Jauan Jennings is definitely one of the top waiver wire pickups for week 1. And if you need a tight end, definitely suggest picking him up. I'll fact check that part, but because the app is going to take forever and I don't feel like doing all of that. You know what I'm saying? That's why you got to have stuff in order before you jump on. Now, let's give you guys a running back. Dylan Sampson, running back for the Cleveland Browns. Because of all the Judkins stuff, and we don't know whether or not he's going to be able to play, Sampson still has fantasy value heading into week 2. He finished as the running back 9, 15.6 fantasy points. But the thing that stood out for Dylan Sampson, which could still have him or still allow him to have a role even when Judkins comes back, is his usage in the pass game. Now, he finished 8 for 8 for 64 yards, and he completely outshined Jerome Ford. So even when Judkins comes back, you could still see a way where Sampson could still be available. Maybe he's not going to be an RB1, but he could still be a flex option because of his usage in the passing game. And he still gave you 12 carries for 26 yards. While the yardage might not be great, the usage in the run game is. So he could be paired up with Quinshawn as their new 1-2 punch for the Cleveland Browns. Now, his roster percentage was just 33% before waivers came in. It's gone above 50% at 59% across ESPN leagues. If he's still available, I would definitely try and pick him up if you need a running back. Like I said, the involvement in the passing game is what is going to be good, especially for PPR formats. So, and we don't know when Judkins is going to return or if the league is going to suspend him and how long. So, rather than wait and find out what they're going to do with Judkins, grab him up, stash him on your bench. You can put him in the flex spot. He does have PPR value. And if you look at the Browns' offense, they don't have a lot of wide receivers. They do have a lot of tight ends. David Njoku, I'm going to say his name right, Arnold Fannin, Jerry Jeudy, and Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman's another one, another wide receiver. If you're looking for somebody to grab up off the waivers, he made the list for our waiver wire article on thefantasyfinest.com. So if you haven't checked that out, and you need even more options than what we mentioned on the show, head over to thefantasyfinest.com and check out our waiver wire article for week 2. And we have a whole bunch of other options as over there as well. So, a little soft plug real quick, you know what I'm saying? But after waivers have gone through, Sampson is now listed as being rostered at 59%. So if he's still out there, make sure that you check your waivers and see if he's still available, because everybody doesn't comb through waivers with a fine-tooth comb. Got to do your due diligence. Let's go to the wide receiver position. Of course, we got to mention Quentin Johnston. Who saw that game coming against the Kansas City Chiefs? That game was crazy. He finished as a wide receiver 3 with 24.9 fantasy points, 5 of 7 for 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, he did come in third in targets behind Lab McConkey and Keenan Allen, but the usage and the surprising willingness to throw the ball with Justin Herbert, despite the fact that we know that Harbaugh and Roman love to run the ball. So it was a little interesting that they decided to throw the ball on the Kansas City Chiefs like they did. But his volume is hopefully going to be there, even if they start to throw the ball a little less and they start to get that ground game going. 4% roster before claims went through, 53. It's up to 53% now. So he's still available. Of course, everybody was making sure that they went out and grabbed him off the waiver wire, which is promising. Because honestly, if we're being real, and I'm definitely part of this, we kind of wrote Johnston off. You know, they drafted Trey Harris. They drafted Keandre Lambert-Smith. Both wide receivers were generating noise throughout the offseason, throughout training camp, and especially KLS was getting a lot of noise coming through the preseason games. And then they signed Keenan Allen off the free agency pile. So it was like, it's all she wrote for Quentin. He's done. But he came out, had a great game against his Kansas City Chiefs, and now he's one of the top waiver wire ads for week 2. Now, I got one more guy that I'm going to give you. It's Trey Benson, running back for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, we know that they're going to be using James Conner and Trey Benson in tandem with each other. But Benson, despite not getting as many carries as Conner, finished the game with 69 yards rushing, completely outshadowing Conner. Now, to be fair, Conner was being used more in the passing game. They haven't really shown, the usage for Trey Benson to be used in the passing game. So maybe that's something to watch that could boost his fantasy value. But if you're looking for a running back or you need a flex option at running back, Trey Benson might be worth a pickup. And he's the direct handcuff for James Conner. We know James Conner has had a little checkered past when it comes to injuries. So you already lock in your handcuff with James Conner if you need him. And he does have some standalone value as he's produced on the ground for week 1. So he was rostered at 51%. It's now up to 54%. Do your due diligence. Go out there and check it out. Make sure that he's still available. And if you need a running back, now you got one. But that's it for this episode of the Fantasy's Finest podcast. Remember, subscribe to the podcast on our YouTube channel. Make sure that you're following us across social media at Fantasy's Finest. Well, it's our new handle is at FS Finest, PHINEST. And of course, you can check out our articles on thefantasyfinest.com, and you can follow the podcast or subscribe to the podcast on all listening platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So that'll do it for this episode. Thank you guys for checking us out. It's not as long-winded because I'm doing it solo. Mark likes to talk sometimes, and we get into it. So, a little short one for you. But that'll do it for this episode. I will see you guys in the next one. We're going to get you guys right for week 2. Trying to jump ahead. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy's Finest podcast. Be sure to join the community on Facebook and follow us on Twitter too at the Fantasy's Finest. See you next episode.